Menaced by Society is derived from that deep, perturbing trend of modern life, when an individual gets caught up by the overpowering current of societal pressures. In modern times, especially with the coming of digitization, society makes immense influences upon our belief, values, and behavior patterns. Those stifled by this commonality, conformed under the canopy of social norms, and demanding acceptance act at the cost of depressing their individuality. This eventually amounts to a mechanical, soulless, and existentially unaware of the self type of life. This clearly emanates from the conflict between individuality and the mentality of the collective. While human beings are social animals, in too many instances, society has changed from a supportive network to an influential, controlling entity that requires obedience at all costs. Those who do not keep to these unwritten rules are often labeled as outcasts, rebels, or even threats. The pressure to fit in is colossal, fostered by institutions, corporations, governments, and cultural trends that define what is considered normal. The dynamics of conformity and the loss of self. The roots of societal influence are deep in the basic human need for acceptance and belonging. As one grows up, there is always the need to be approved by the family, peers, and elders. Such early influences mold our perception of what is right and wrong, what's desirable, and what's socially acceptable. As we grow older, this conditioning sets into a subconscious set of do's and don'ts that governs our behavior. However, the toll sneaks up in a greater dimension today in the hyper-connected world. Social media, advertising, entertainment, and even education have significant roles in making these morals of life uniform. People are always bombarded with messages that describe what to put on, how to think, and what to value. It is fear from this very idea of ostracism from these societal norms that pushes them to extinguish behind themselves to adopt the persona of a collective. The famous conformity experiments conducted by psychologist Solomon Asch back in the 1950s really showed how fast people could be influenced by group pressure. Many subjects changed their answers to conform to the majority, which was often objectively wrong. This supports quite a strong psychological lean towards social harmony over one's own truths, again reinforcing society's strong hand on individual thought and behavior. The configuration of the collective psyche with technology and mass media. First of all, in the 21st century, the media landscape is gradually turning into a method for the manipulation of popular culture. Algorithms allowing for high levels of user engagement tend to incite sensational information with radical opinions, banishing alternative voices and other points of view from the public arena. This enhances the echo chambers that are on the rise, where people do not receive any other information except what points toward the confirmation of an idea or notion that they have held since the beginning. It thus shrinks their horizons of perception and critical thinking. This is further amplified by social media. The steady exposure to images and opinions that have all been set to fit certain standards puts pressure on people to compare themselves with others. It creates a kind of inability to live up to expectations, which will further lead them to follow the trends set by society. The influencer culture commodified personal identity and managed to link self-worth with likes, followers, and trends. Those who resist such commodification of identity often face vilification or are ignored, another way of reinforcing the premise that one should not deviate from societal norms. The effect of this type of induced conformity through media is deep. Research has linked high levels of social media use to the increase in anxiety, depression, and loneliness in individuals. This kind of pressure to maintain a socially acceptable, perfect image blossoms into feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt, further serving to reinforce a person in this social mindset. The hidden forces behind societal control. Underlying this societal compulsion, however, is a darker element: the manipulation of society through powerful institutions to achieve evil ends. Most governments, corporations, and other influential entities exploit the collective psyche to their advantage. Working the control of information allows these structures to manipulate public opinion, suppress dissent, and control the population. This is not novel. History has repeatedly witnessed how autocratic governments have used propaganda and censorship to engineer society. Most of the totalitarian regimes, which emerged during the 20th century, such as Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, demonstrated amply how an absence of individuality and inculcation of a mass psychology can lead to mass conformity and loss of freedom for the people. Their opponents, who stood against the mass mentality, usually faced persecution or liquidation. Nowadays, control measures have taken on subtler forms. Data analytics, surveillance, and psychological manipulation have all been a part of the shaping force by governments and major corporations in influencing behavior at a mass scale. The revelations of Edward Snowden concerning the mass surveillance programs of the NSA in the United States let the whole world know how far the government monitors its own citizens. This kind of surveillance engenders a chilling effect in citizens, compelling them to toe the line because they feel they are being watched. Corporate interests create a powerful impact on society. For example, the multi-billion-dollar-a-year advertising industry exists largely to influence and manipulate consumer behavior, to reinforce an ethic of materialism, instant gratification, and an unattainable definition of success and beauty. Corporations influence individuals to seek affirmation through consumption. With this, not only is human freedom further dissolved, but so too is a misdirection from deeper forces within society. Social pressure, the psychological effect. Being menaced by society might be seriously traumatic for people psychologically. The pressure to fit in, to conform, and to achieve the expectations of society gives rise to people losing their identity, purpose, or meaning. People may find themselves living lives that are not of their own choosing because of external compulsions, rather than a force internally directed. In this regard, feelings of emptiness, depression, and disconnection from oneself can well up. The social psychologist Erich Fromm considered this phenomenon in the context of his book entitled Escape from Freedom. He there explained that man in modern society does oftentimes give up his freedom in security and belonging. It is this escape from freedom that results in a kind of self-alienation, where individuals are passive, conforming members of society, rather than active and autonomous agents of their own lives. The result, the other side effect of suppression of individuality most of the time, is heightened anxiety and stress. The never-ending rat race of being what society considers normal breeds a deeply ingrained sense of ineptness as one constantly fails to be good enough in the minds of others. Many tend towards obsessive perfectionism or turn down the dark alley of substance abuse and self-mutilation. The backlash against conformity. In spite of the immense pressure to socialize, there has always been a countercurrent of human beings resisting society and insisting on their uncanny autonomous self. Such non-conformists, often enough and in turn, happen to face a backlash from this very same society, where their failure or will to conform causes disruptions in the group's cohesion. Challenging conventions throughout history has invariably led to persecution for people such as Socrates, Galileo, and Martin Luther King Jr. But in recent times, there has been an upsurge of people who gave up living under the pressure of contemporary society and decided to live authentically and meaningfully. New alternative lifestyles like minimalism, off-grid living, and a reconsideration of consumerist attitudes really do reflect alienation, which society generally exerts through expectations from people. Meanwhile, interest in self-awareness and individualism practices of meditation, mindfulness, and psychotherapy also grew in parallel. Each of these strongly conveys the message that all individuals find their trust and meaning within themselves, rather than deriving it from others. The spiritual and occult dimensions of societal control. Beyond the psychological and political, there are more deep and mysterious levels of control. Throughout human history, the occult and spiritual traditions repeat warnings about the dangers of collective control and the suppression of the individual. In many of the ancient societies, it was the priesthood or ruling class who would use religion and ritual to keep their flocks in line, often with the threat of the supernatural. Many esoteric traditions have symbolized the masses as the faceless, soulless entity. There are some occultists who believe that society as a conglomeration might become a thought form or egregore, an independent but non-human psychic entity who functions as a force upon the psyche of a man. This collective force can be influenced by those who understand its working, using techniques such as mass rituals, propaganda, or psychological conditioning to control the thoughts and behaviors of the masses. Some spiritual teachers, in more modern interpretations, would say that society is essentially a form of matrix, or something man-made, that keeps people ensnared in a state of unconsciousness. The pressures to conform, consume, and obey come across as diversion from people waking up into their true spiritual nature. The power of observation and detachment. It is not only a matter of questioning the narratives, but sharpening one's observation skills. It is a matter of breaking oneself free from the bonds of societal control to really see through the illusions created by people and institutions. Observation is one of the keys to discerning reality from illusion. It deals with observing what people do, not what they say. Where words are denotative, actions are indicative. A person's behavior is more indicative of their true intentions than what they say. Words may be manipulated, scripted, and fine-tuned to mislead by false promises, misleading narratives, or empty rhetoric altogether. Actions, though, are tangible manifestations of one's true motivations in concrete form. By watching the patterns of people and groups and larger forces, you start to cut through the din and see what's really happening. For example, companies would flaunt themselves as committed to ecological causes with well-oiled publicity campaigns, but their actions speak of another truth: the pollution of rivers, the cutting down of trees, and the exploitation of cheap labor. A man would say he is loyal or a good friend, but what he continually chooses, how he treats others, and where he places his priorities, paint an indelibly clearer picture of his character. This observing power offers the possibility of stepping back. The moment you turn your focus from what is said to what is done, you are putting emotional distance in between you and their manipulations. When taken away from all the convincing speech, marketing, and peer pressure, one can get a better view. The noise of what is socially acceptable or normal starts to lose its hold on you, since you're no longer in the illusions created by the words. Overcoming peer pressure and mass suggestion. The best way to escape peer pressure is through detachment by observation. In simpler words, once this emotional need to be what others are telling you is detached from you, you start becoming less affected by the fear of disapproval or insult. Peer pressure works through language suggestions, commands, or opinions. Language can be used to manipulate you, concluding that you are free to carve out your own path. Furthermore, this detachment gives you a means to measure peer pressure for what it often really is: a mechanism of control. It is not about what is best for you as an individual, but about the status quo or the enforcement of societal norms. Once you start to realize this, you can observe it without being pulled into its current. You are aware of the dynamics at play, but you do not feel an emotional need to follow the course set forth. Through this process, you regain control. You no longer are subject to being swept along by what you may or may not have made of your life so far. Rather, you have a vantage point from which to be able to observe and choose what best suits your innermost reality. In observing, rather than reacting with emotion to words and their accompanying messages, one creates a clearing in which real individuality can rise. This allows freedom without the pull of social expectation, peer pressure, or institutionalized mandate. So the road to freedom from being controlled by society is in fact very simple yet profound. Detach from words, observe actions, and through this, regain your individuality and power. Thank you for spending time with us through Spookscope today. Feel free to share your thoughts and theories in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, my dear spooker, stay curious.